Walking into my own kitchen after 18 months in the sandbox should have been the most peaceful moment of my life. But instead, I found a total stranger frying eggs in my grandmother's vintage cast iron skillet. I'm talking about a woman I'd never seen in my life, casually seasoning the pan like she was queen of the castle, while her husband sat on my couch. My couch, the one I spent months saving up for, and their kids were busy turning my dining table into a graveyard of cereal crumbs. I stood there, still wearing my combat boots, gripping my duffel bag, so hard my knuckles turned white, feeling like a ghost haunting his own life. My first thought? Maybe I'd walked into the wrong house. My second thought? Oh, hell no. The woman looked up, squinting at me like I was a delivery driver who'd accidentally wandered into the wrong zip code, and with a voice dripping with enough entitlement to fill a reservoir, she said, "Excuse me, can I help you? Can you help me?" I repeated, my voice sounding like gravel grinding together. "Yeah, you can help me by telling me why you're my house." She didn't even flinch. She just straightened her apron, walked over to the counter, and waved a piece of paper in my face like it was some kind of holy relic. "We pay rent to Margaret Whitfield," she said, practically smelling of unearned confidence. "We live here legally." Legally. The word felt like a slap. Before I could even process the absurdity, the front door swung open and in walked Margaret herself, the HOA president, the neighborhood queen bee, and apparently my own personal nightmare. She was draped in enough designer labels to hide the fact that her soul was completely bankrupt, wearing this smug, condescending grin that made my blood run cold. She didn't even look at me at first, just checked her watch and chirped, "Jake, you're back early. Property abandonment requires specific HOA protocols, you know. You really should have read the fine print." Abandonment. I'd been in a combat zone serving my country, and this woman, this middle-aged grifter who thought a white Lexus and a fake real estate license made her an aristocrat, had the audacity to tell me I'd abandoned my home? I didn't need to explain myself to her, but the rage building in my chest was so hot it felt like I was back in the desert heat. She'd spent 6 years running our little neighborhood in Sunset Hills like it was a feudal estate, keeping track of lawn heights with a ruler and acting like a stray Christmas light was a federal offense. I'm Jake Brennan, third-generation Army. I grew up in foster homes after my parents were taken from me when I was 8, and that ranch-style house was the first thing in my entire life that was actually truly mine. It wasn't a mansion, but it was my sanctuary. I'd spent years fixing it up, pouring every spare cent into that garage to restore old motorcycles, making it a place where I could finally breathe. When I got the orders in January, I followed every single rule. I set up autopay, I cleared everything with the bank, and I specifically sat down with Margaret to tell her about my deployment. She'd sat there, nodding like a concerned neighbor, even offering to keep an eye on things. I thought she was a pillar of the community. Man, was I wrong. 3 months in, the violations started appearing. A blade of grass too long here, a slightly faded trim there. Mrs. Fiona, my 70-year-old neighbor, a woman who's practically a saint, tried her best to keep the place up, but she just couldn't handle the heavy equipment. Instead of being a neighbor, Margaret saw an opportunity. She didn't offer help. She started salivating over the fines. She dug up some dusty, obscure clause that basically said if a property looked neglected for 90 days, the HOA could manage it for the community's sake. She forged the paperwork, backdated the notices that never arrived, and rented out my dream to the first family she could squeeze a deposit out of. She pocketed $8,000 in security deposits and administrative fees, all while I was busy trying to keep my head down in a war zone. It was a perfect, nasty little scam. But she didn't count on one thing. I came back. And I didn't come back alone. I spent the next 48 hours doing more recon than I ever did in Afghanistan. I didn't just walk in her office with my deployment papers. I walked in with the truth. She tried to hit me with a stack of certified letters, all fake, all forged. She looked me dead in the eye, that same smug grin plastered on her face, and told me, "Jake, honey, you're confused. You signed the paperwork. It's all perfectly legal." She thought I'd be intimidated. She thought a soldier would just roll over and accept the bureaucracy. But I didn't just dig up the truth. I brought the shovel. I spent 2 straight days at the county recorder's office until my eyes burned. And that's when I found it, the smoking gun. Margaret hadn't filed a single piece of that paperwork with the county. She hadn't reported a dime of that rental income to the HOA board. It was all a backroom deal, a total grift. And then the twist happened. Just as I was putting the pieces together with Sarah, a lawyer for Veterans Legal Aid who, honestly, was the sharpest person I'd ever met, we discovered something else. Margaret wasn't just targeting me. She had been running a network of abandoned properties across 3 different neighborhoods, milking the system for years. She was a professional parasite, but it wasn't just the paperwork that got her. It was her own arrogance. She started harassing the family she'd put in my house, Maria and Carlos, because she was terrified they'd realize the scam and talk to me. She was so desperate to keep them quiet that she actually broke into my garage one night, looking for some kind of evidence of my supposed negligence to frame me, maybe plant some drugs or some trash. She thought she was slick. She didn't realize that when you spend your life securing perimeters, you don't stop just because you're home. I had cameras, high definition, night vision, the works. I watched her on my phone, pacing through my garage, moving my tools around like she was looking for a hiding spot. I called the cops, and I walked into that garage just as she was trying to shove a trash bag under my workbench. The look on her face when the sirens pulled into the driveway, you couldn't buy that kind of satisfaction. It was like watching a house of cards get hit by a hurricane. She went from being the neighborhood queen to a handcuffed suspect in the span of 3 minutes. The trial wasn't even a contest. Between the federal charges for forgery, the exploitation of a service member under the Civil Relief Act, and the mountain of fraud cases from other neighbors who finally grew a spine and came forward, she didn't stand a chance. 15 years in federal prison. I sat there in the courtroom, watching her get led away, and I felt nothing but relief. My home was mine again. The neighborhood was finally breathing easier, and the power dynamic had shifted back to where it belonged, with the people, not the predators. It's a strange feeling, coming home from a war only to find out you had to fight a different kind of battle in your own backyard. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? We spend so much time looking for threats on the horizon that we forget to check who's holding the keys to our front door when we're gone. Some people think justice is something that just happens, but it's not. It's something you have to hunt for, fight for, and hold on to with everything you've got. So, here's the thing that keeps me up at night. If this could happen to me, with all the protections in place, how many other people are out there just silently losing everything to someone who thinks they're untouchable? Does justice really exist if you're not willing to burn the house down to get it? I'd be curious to hear what you think. Have you ever had to fight a system that was built to crush you, or have you ever stood by and watched someone get away with something they definitely shouldn't have? Let's talk about it. Drop a comment, share your own story, and let's see if we can't hold the line a little better than we used to. Because at the end of the day, no one should ever feel like a stranger in their own home.